Namaste and welcome back to another episode of the Sapient. Today we have Isaac on the podcast. I don't know whether I just spelled his name right or not. I hope I did. Could you let me know how do I spell your name?
It's ISAAC, Isaac Mashman.
Got it. Yeah, but you got a very, I would say, interesting second name, right?
It's unique. It's funny, Ganesh, because I actually used to hate my last name. I absolutely despised it growing up because it was my biological father's name. And I didn't really connect with him until I was already an adult. It was one of those situations where he wasn't in the picture. He and my mom got divorced when I was still a baby. And so growing up, I had that animosity towards the idea of Mashman. I had no emotional connection. I hated it. But then as I got older, I realized, man, I could build it and give meaning to it. And
Yes.
here we are.
Yeah, it's almost like the McDonald's name, right? It's like a marketable kind of name.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking you because you are in marketing, right? You're in personal branding and marketing.
Well, yeah, personal branding is marketing and branding are symbiotic when it comes to building a personal brand. I mean, we could have a debate on whether marketing or branding is more important, but really the kind of brand that you're trying to build influences your marketing strategy. You don't see, Rolls-Royce marketing at, an American football game or at the soccer World Cup, but you'll see like Rolex or something marketing itself at, a golf tour or a higher class sport like tennis. So how you're wanting to build a brand influences how you market. But Mashman is, some people that I work with and some of my clients struggle because their name is so common. Like Brian Johnson is somebody I recently had a conversation with, but how many Brian Johnsons are around the world? Hundreds, thousands.
Too many.
And so if you're trying to build out your personal brand and you're fighting all these people, you have to really dig deep into strategy or maybe use your middle name or use an initial or use a pseudonym, and it becomes a struggle. But for me, coming in as Isaac Mashman, that's one of one, baby. That's unique, and I think that, like, for example, if I was to search up Ganesh Dada, is that a unique name? Or is it, and especially, and this is really an interesting thing from a cultural perspective that I think we could totally have a conversation about that I've never really talked in a podcast. But typically you think about certain cultures, like how many Mohammeds are in there, in Arabic cultures, and Arabic countries?
Yeah.
Millions. Yes. And same with like Spanish people, how many Isabellas or how many, Hernans or how many Andres, Alejandros. And it's the same thing with like Indian, culture as well. I mean, a lot of the names, like I think about Neil Patel, right? And he's one of the greatest marketers in the digital age today. Yeah. And his name is Neil Patel. But I imagine he probably had to fight to show up.
Yeah, Neil Patel is rather a common name, man. Yeah, man. I think he got into SEO in the right time, right? Where he did establish himself before other Neil Patels established themselves. Yeah, that's a similar struggle for me too, because I don't have a great second name. Like great sounding name. So I almost had to rely on my initials, right, which is GD, rather than the whole name, because I don't know why my parents named me so weird. So what's your opinion about, right, people who change, like, let's say they come up with a stage name, right? So what's your opinion of that? Do you think it's more of a fake thing, or is it like whatever works?
I think it's smart. And a lot of times there's some hesitancy when choosing a stage name because you feel like you're leaving yourself. And you're not leaving yourself. You're making a strategic business decision that will help you become more marketable and stand out. And so it's not trying to be disrespectful to mom or dad because your parents named you at the end of the day. It's not like you're saying, Mom or Dad, I hate your name that you gave me. No, it's that you have to make a decision that's best for your business and for your success long term. And so whether that be, for example, coming up with a middle name, so you could be Ganesh Z Dada, for example, like, and use Z as the middle initial, that could be a strategy that you could use. And what does Z stand for? Well, it doesn't really matter, but it helps you stand out because now you could get the handle at Ganesh Z Dada get the website, get the URL, get all those things to where now you're promoting yourself as such. And coming up with a pseudonym or a stage name. I mean, think about Lady Gaga or The Rock, right? The Rock is not The Rock. The Rock is Dwayne Johnson,
I don't think
And
that's also his legal name, though. That's what I feel like. He has too many stage names. Right? I mean, there is a whole possibility that his real name is not like Dwayne Johnson, maybe.
I believe his real name is Dwayne Johnson, but his stage name is The Rock. But you think about a lot of the celebrities you follow, they use stage names because their actual name was taken or didn't sound as good. And you think about
sucked.
It sucked, or it doesn't flow off the tongue. It's not memorable. You're not wrong. But I mean, think about you coming into the name and your name is John Smith. You're not going to be memorable, right? Like you wrote the Declaration of Independence kind of thing. Like that's what it sounds like, but coming up with something, interesting, something that is marketable, something unique that creates that memorability that people can have.
Yeah. I feel like the worst name you could have is John Doe.
John Doe?
Right?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I think you must have experienced it, right? All of the, like extra texts contain his name already there. Right? People use his name as example all the time. So if you're John Doe, Isaac, what is your suggestion to a John Doe at this point of time?
Man, it's such a fascinating and really easygoing conversation, but I love it. In that case, I would say, again, you could look about using a middle initial or using your full name. So let's say your middle name is, let's just go ahead and say that it is Samson, right? So you could go by John Samson Doe, and you would be much more likely to show up on that. But even then, you wouldn't want to use John S. Doe because there are probably thousands of John S. Does out there. Now, John Doe in of itself is not a common name. That was if I'm not mistaken, that was something that was created as an identifier for missing peoples. And so it's called a John Doe. But speaking as if that was a common name, such as John Smith or Brian Johnson, you could use your middle initial, you could create a middle initial, you could use your full middle name, or you could go into, let's create a name that's entirely unique. So maybe you drop the Doe and you create something different. So it's John Samson, Excalibur, just something that could be so outlandish in a way to where now you're known as John Excalibur or something else. That way you can really start showing up in search, having your domain, having your social media handle. Because you think about, why is this even important? Well, it's visibility. And if you're fighting with, in your case or Neil Patel's case, 1,000 other Indian marketers, you're like, how are you building yourself as an authority? And this is saying in a respectful way, but it's a challenge. And man, I think that India is becoming, there was a book that I read in high school that was talking about how India is becoming that mega center for business and the economy. And we think about outsourcing here in America. A lot of companies outsource to India or the Philippines because it's cheaper for the company in the US, but the quality of living that we're able to provide for, let's say, somebody who's in India or the Philippines is high because of the standard of living and the quality. Yeah. And I think that more people we're going to see this entire Instagram hustle culture in India over the next decade. I could see that happening. The same thing in Africa, like we're going to see Nigerian influencers, ripping off Dan Bilzerian, and other business people. Yeah. And I think that's exciting to see. It's going to make it hyper competitive, but
yeah, I feel like, okay, there is a fact that says, we have our own space program, right? ISRO. And, you people have NASA, and more Indians work in NASA than ISRO.
Fascinating. I'm not surprised by that fact. But I mean, you look at statistics and you look at like in the United States, for example, what nationality of people make the most money?
Browns.
And Indians are up there. It's not not the average white person who has the most income. It's it's you have Pakistani, you have Indian, you have these foreign, ethically diverse people and groups that are making more money. And I think that speaks to the work ethic of, let's go to America, the land of opportunity, and let's create a life for ourselves, when you could start creating that life, where you're at, and putting out content online and building out a personal brand and building out your significance and your trust, your public authority.
Got it. Isaac, if a person wanted to grow an online personality, let's say, right? Let's not call it as a brand, let's call it as a personality. um, from zero, right, from ground up, how much time and how much effort, right, would they need to put in before they make something of it?
Well, it depends on what you're looking to get from it, right? So what is
Just
that
fame,
something?
just fame, just recognition,
Okay.
right?
Well, you have to first understand that your personal brand is you. A big misconception people have is they believe that they create a new website, they create a new social media page on Instagram or Facebook. They're creating a new personal brand. And that's not the case. Your personal brand you've had from the moment you were born. From the moment your
Hmm.
mom pushed you out and gave you a name, you've had a personal brand. And I could argue that you've had a personal brand even when you were in the womb, because she was talking about little baby Ganesh to your grandparents, to your
Hmm.
grandfather, your grandmother, and to all of her friends, right? So you've had a personal brand, and now you have to go and consciously start building it and leveraging it and doing things that can, get you results. And so whether you want to be famous or you want to make money, you all start at zero when you create a social media page. But whether you get your local friends to follow you online, which they're
Hmm.
probably going to criticize you, but let's say you start connecting with business owners and wherever you're at, your city, and whether
Hmm.
that's somebody who's a tech entrepreneur or a local stand owner, or somebody who's at a business networking event, or a hotel owner, you connect with
Hmm.
these people online, and you start popping up time and time again, and you come up with something to sell, whether that be a service or a course or a program.
Yeah, I lost you for a second there.
Yeah, I don't think that's on my end, but we could just resume where we were. It's not a problem.
Yeah, yeah. So we were talking about how, you know, when we start to build a social media presence, right?
Hmm.
What are the steps to do? And, my question was, how much time and effort does it take to build something,
Yeah.
something
Well,
substantial?
absolutely. And in terms of time and money and what you're putting into it, you don't need to put any money into it to start with. Like, you have
Hmm.
the normal clothes that you're wearing on your back, you have the normal phone that you're using, and so you could take that phone and start recording yourself and just putting yourself out there online. You create a
Hmm.
social media account, so you get on Instagram, you get on Facebook, you get on LinkedIn, you get on these platforms underneath your name. You get the same social media handle across everywhere. So, for
Hmm.
example, my name is Isaac Mashman. I have at Isaac Mashman everywhere. There's no
Hmm.
dispute which Isaac you're following. Like, it is
Yeah.
me. And you start creating this omnipresence, so you're
Hmm.
everywhere all the time. And then
Yeah.
from there, you create content based off of a specialty and based off of you as the person. So you showcase some of your interests from time to time. But let's say you're wanting to be known for podcast management, or you're wanting
Hmm.
to, create a specific business such as consulting, or helping with YouTube optimization, or you're wanting to do social media management. You start creating content based
Hmm.
around those specific subject areas. And the reason you create this content is you get viewed as an authority in that field. And if you're viewed as an authority and you have people who know that they can trust you,
Hmm.
then you're able to stand out and start getting more of their business and more of the person's business on the other end of the phone, the other end of the
Hmm.
screen, even though they might be 5,000 miles away from you.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. um so when you look at the whole content perspective, right, like how people put out content, I think
Mm-hmm.
there is like two kind of sides to that debate. There is one side which says, give value to your followers, right, in terms of share what you know, or spread knowledge. And there is another, I would say, the side of debate which would say that, share less, but gain more mileage in terms of reach.
Hmm.
So which side are you on in that particular context? Because a lot of people have gone through the cycle of creating everything, and they're established.
Hmm.
But I think people it's like bipolar, right? It's like they're confused what to do, or they do the both, right? They try to give value for some time, and then they're like, okay, it's not working, so let me pull back the level of value but gain more mileage in terms of reach, organic reach. What's your, I would say, side of debate on that?
Well, this is a very intricate question that has a lot of different avenues I could go down and talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am in the boat that says you don't need to just create value. Value could be perceived as motivation. I can motivate you with a video and you could feel good. That's an emotional high. Get the dopamine spike, you feel good. What I'm
Mm-hmm.
about is strategic value. So what's the difference between value and strategic value? Well, just like I'm going and walking through the actual steps that you need to take in order to start up a social media account, or how to, find a way for you to stand out with your name if you're fighting other people. That
Mm-hmm.
is an example of strategic value, something that people can go from step A to step
Mm-hmm.
Z, from step 1 to step 121. That is what people are wanting. People are not stupid. And I think that social media has created this rift to where people think that they could just put out some piece of crap content that they think is motivational, right? And what is that person getting on the other end of the screen? And there are
Mm-hmm.
4 main things that a piece of content can do. It could do a combination of all 4, 1 or 2, 3, all, 1. It could entertain. So it's making somebody feel good, right? You're entertaining somebody, you're making them laugh, or maybe they
Mm-hmm.
watch it because they like it. It can educate a person and teach them something new. It can connect
Mm-hmm.
them. So the piece of content that you create is connecting you with the person on the other end, and vice versa, because there's a shared interest. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, most podcasts, it's 10 p.m. when I'm recording this with you, but typically I'll have a cup of coffee in my hand, and
Mm-hmm.
people know that I drink coffee. I'm not like, I don't drink tea, I drink coffee. So that is something that can establish rapport with somebody
Mm-hmm.
on the other end of the phone.
Yeah.
And then a piece of content can inspire or motivate and take that person to another level, to where they feel like they could take action and run through walls, right?
Yeah.
So when you're creating a piece of content that could be talking about how you can launch a podcast, well,
Mm-hmm.
you could talk about the actual strategy. So it's educational. You could say that I did this myself, so it's inspirational. You could say
Mm-hmm.
that I remember one of the goofiest things that happened,
Mm-hmm.
that's connecting you. And then you could go into the editing style to make it
Yeah.
entertaining. So
Mm-hmm.
you can do all of these different things with one piece of content. And the more boxes you can check, the better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, the second part of that question is, well, should you be reserved with the amount of content you create, or should you go wide with the distribution? So really effectively, you're talking about, should I only post maybe one piece of content every couple of days, versus let me
Yes.
post multiple times a day, or one time a day?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am in the boat that you need to be posting at least one short video every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be posting that same video on multiple platforms. So you have
Yes.
multiple algorithms working for you. Now, a lot of times in the music industry or with
Mm-hmm.
celebrities, there's this perceived distance between the
Yes.
person who is the fan of the celebrity and the celebrity themselves. So you have this distance, this question, this void, this curiosity that's created. And that will naturally be created as you create content and as your follower count increases. So the
Mm-hmm.
person who has 100 followers doesn't have much distance between them and the follower who's going to their profile. But now,
Mm-hmm.
Ganesh, imagine if you had 1 million followers or 100,000, there's distance now. To where
Yeah.
the person who hits that follow button or thinks about hitting that follow button is saying, okay, this person's done something. They're a little bit
Mm-hmm.
different than me, right? And
Yeah.
that's when we get into the psychology of building a personal brand, and the psychological way that this entire thing works. Because us humans, man, we're emotional.
Yes. And we can easily be manipulated, right?
You're
That's
not
what
wrong.
marketing is about.
It is.
Right. Yeah. I was about to ask you this, right? Because I'm also a digital marketer.
Mhm.
So when people come to me and ask, like, what should I do to put out a lot of content, but I don't have a time? So this is my suggestion. Let me know how, or what could they do better. I'm like,
Mhm.
the best free content that you could produce is podcasts. You go on other people's podcast, you get the video, right? You clip it through AI and
Yeah.
just post it, right? It would take them less than 20 minutes for 25 reels or shorts.
Mhm.
So it's like, that's what I suggest. Is there any other alternative ways which is free and quick?
Well, Ganesh, that would be literally one of my pieces of advice that I would give a client. Like if a client
Hmm.
said, what can I do? And I don't have a whole bunch of time, it would be go on other people's podcasts or start your own podcast.
Yep.
Use artificial intelligence to edit it. Thinking about 5 years ago, if I wanted to have somebody caption my video and add Zoom and add
Yeah.
music and all that other
$100
stuff,
per hour.
no, literally, it would have cost me $50
Yes.
or $100 for a package of 2 or 3 videos. And now I pay $10 USD for an editing software called Captions AI. I take a video that takes me, over time, I've gotten better at recording content. So what
Mm-hmm.
used to take me 45 takes, I can do in 3 takes now. But
Mm-hmm.
it's taken me time and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, I would argue maybe damn near thousands of takes in order to actually get good at this. But now
Mm-hmm.
I take that video, I put it into Captions AI.
Mm-hmm.
It adds the captions automatically. It adds emojis. I'm able to put the zoom. I'm able to put the music and create something that's 100% unique. And it costs me $10 USD every month, right?
Yeah, that's
Very low
simple.
barrier to entry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's making it hyper competitive, which means that you
Mm-hmm.
need to start doing things to where other people are edifying you.
Yeah.
And what is edification? Edification is basically saying that you vouch for a person. You
Mm-hmm.
say that I trust this individual. Me coming on your show is a form of edification because you're saying to your audience that, hey, I trust Isaac Mashman enough to invite him
Yes.
on for this conversation, and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa, because now I promote it and I
Yep.
say, hey, I was on the show. This is great. Now you're edified because
Mm-hmm.
I'm basically saying, hey, I was on the show and now I'm promoting it,
Yes.
which means that I liked you enough
Mm-hmm.
to want to see you win and gain exposure. So it's like this
Yes.
mix of selfishness and selflessness
Yeah.
that ultimately curates content. And so
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's
I
what I
think.
would recommend.
Yeah, I think this exercise is more about attention swapping, right?
Yep.
People who are looking at you look at me, and people who look at me look at you. Yeah, because this is not like a sponsored or anything. There is a software called as Weed, VEED. It has an AI feature where if you put up like a long clip of 2 hour
Mhm.
conversation, it will automatically go and put in captions, put in your logo if you want, and it will cut into like 30 seconds, 40 seconds reels. And
Mhm.
if you have like a 2 hours conversation, it is I try because I try it and I use it, right? So it generates more than like 50 to 60 reels,
Mhm.
and I'm like, yeah, that works. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the best free marketing thing that a person could do.
And you could record a vlog or a long form training in front of a whiteboard or so many
Yes.
different things. You could do webinars and you could clip those into a bunch of pieces of content as
Yeah.
well. So like the
Mhm.
YouTube app has a remix feature that you're able to remix your own long form videos that are vertical
Yeah.
or horizontal and clip them into a bunch of vertical videos. And the
Mhm.
other thing that you could do is reaction style videos. This is something I'm like, man, this takes literally 2 minutes to do. But let's
Mhm.
say there's somebody like you take a Neil Patel clip and he was talking about the difference between personal brands and Kylie Jenner and corporate
Mhm.
brands such as Coca-Cola. I took a
Mhm.
5 second clip of that and I reacted to it. I added to it. I didn't just
Mhm.
react to it. I added value to that reaction. And I said that, hey, this is actually true. You think about personal brands, you think about Jeff Bezos and Amazon, you think Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, you
Mhm.
think about Elon Musk and Tesla. So I reacted and I added value. And
Mhm.
by doing that, you could get 50 pieces of content done in less than a day. And
Yes.
now you're not even having to do all of the bulk and the heavy lifting of creating it originally yourself. You're
Mhm.
adding expertise to it. And that's, this
Yeah.
conversation's aimed at the person who's working to become that professional in a field, in a niche, not so much the broader base, like, this is a personality. Although I
Yeah.
do think that you should showcase your personal side of you as well, some of your
Yeah.
interests from time to time.
Mhm. Yeah, but I also feel like internet has a lot of tolerance.
Hmm.
So you can talk about anything and everything. Like even the shit that you do not understand, you can talk about it.
Yeah.
People will still listen to you. But the question is, can you retain them, right? Can you retain them in the long term? Will they be engaging in your future content, right? That's the proof of your work.
Hmm.
um, so okay, let me ask you this. What do you feel about like idiot marketing, when people or brands treat their consumers as if they're child, like they do not have the comprehension ability, so they try to you know talk down, I would say,
Yeah.
in marketing. What's your opinion on that?
Oh man, the best way I could explain it is they're the politicians of capitalism.
Yes, exactly.
This right here is a clipped video right here. We could take this and clip it and viral. No, literally, I believe that businesses or people that speak as if their consumer is stupid, they're the
Hmm.
politicians of capitalism. And
Yeah.
what do politicians typically be referred to as? People who are better than us, better than the common folk. This is historical. I mean, all throughout history, we've had politicians that are thinking that, oh, I have to come in and save the day because they can't save themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
when a business or a brand is talking about, okay, let's address something and just, I'm trying to think of an example other than the broad base, just, it's kind of like covering up a reputational crisis. So
Yes.
before I went into Mashman Consulting Group and the 100% consulting space that I committed to, I was running a public relations for Mashman Ventures, and public relations is notorious for cover-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a negative connotation when it comes to PR, right? So PR is like you're manipulating people, which is common in marketing, but PR is like you're hiding things.
Yeah.
And
I
if
mean,
you're
I mean,
thinking,
I think there's a saying, right, that says PR exists because people mess up,
hmm, I've
right?
never heard of that, but it's true. It's true. But PR, and I could talk about that for days on end about how public relations is not reserved for celebrities or the rich. Every single thing you're doing to build out your personal brand is a form of PR, because public relations is ultimately a person's relationship with the public, right? That was literally said by Edward Bernays. It's like it's the relationship with the people. And so you're thinking about a cover up and a brand acting like it didn't happen. It's like you're basically saying, oh, you're gaslighting your audience into thinking something, versus getting ahead of it and saying, no, okay, this happened, we screwed up. And now if you think about we screwed up versus the I don't know what you're talking about, or the ignorance, which is going to create more security long term? The audience would
Yeah.
be much more likely to respect the
Mm-hmm.
brand or respect the person for saying
Mm-hmm.
I messed up
Mm-hmm.
than saying no, you're stupid. Nope, nope, didn't
Mm-hmm.
happen.
What if you take the Diddy route? The rapper Diddy, right? He never responded to his accusations. Do you think do you think
Hmm.
that's a sound strategy? Like, just don't talk about the
Well,
shits.
I don't think it's a sound strategy per se, because I believe that though it happens, it depends on the situation. It's very
Mm-hmm.
relative. So think about Liver King, right? The big guy who's on everybody's Instagram page. But no, I know you're laughing here, Ganesh, but this is a real conversation about.
Yep.
He went on multiple shows, multiple times, multiple
Mhm.
occasions, and said, "I do not do steroids."
Multiple years.
Multiple years as well, right?
Yeah.
And it was clear that, all right, he probably is doing it, but let's just leave the gig alone. Then he came out with an apology video and he said, I screwed up, I lied. I lied. He has not been able to recover his brand. The reason
Yeah.
why is because he specifically lied to the audience.
Mhm.
If he did not lie, and if he came out and let's say he just said, no, I do steroids, but this is beneficial, he would
Mhm.
have had security in his brand. Maybe not as viral, but he would have had security. Versus, let's say, P. Diddy, right? And he's completely ignored everything. It's kind of like I'm trying to think of the best way of breaking this down, because you think about Andrew Tate, right? One of the most famous guys on the internet. Let's talk about Andrew Tate. And this is only the second time on a podcast I've done so. He's gotten in front of every single accusation and said, this is why it's false. This is
Mhm.
what's going on. And
Yeah.
people respect him for it.
Mhm.
He's been able to turn that perceived negative thing into some way to where now it's no, like I am in control of the narrative. And so the conversation here, Ganesh, is I'm in control of the narrative versus the narrative
Mhm.
is in control of me.
Yeah, but okay, let me dive deep, right? Because there are people, who do not answer accusations, like they do not even address it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of makes them like bulletproof, I feel like. For example, if you want to talk about rap, it's like Eminem, right? Like people have accused him of a lot of shit, and he never responds, and that kind of makes him accusation proof, right? Like you can throw shit at him, but it's not going to stick. That's why I asked you what's your take on that, because a lot of people, their core marketing is to never address issues.
Okay, but if we're diving deep about this, though, Eminem has addressed all of those accusations that he's ever been thrown.
Hmm.
It's not that he's accusation proof, but it's that he takes the accusation and he references it in his craft, so in his music. So it's like his most recent album, the Death of Slim Shady, which in my opinion is his best album since like 2008 Recovery. Uh,
Hmm.
he literally addresses everything that he's been accused of over the past couple of years, or like the
Yeah.
culture and how he's fallen off and all these other things.
Hmm.
And so he is answering the
Yeah,
accusations through his
but it's
craft. But
it's
the
it's in a
average
it's in
person,
a it's in a longer time frame, right? It's
yeah,
not like accusation happened and he responded, right? It
yeah.
might be a couple of years. but he's going to respond it eventually. Do you
This is
think
true.
that's beneficial, or it's like the crisis mode, as you said, like Andrew Tate, right? Whatever happens, instant feedback to the
Mhm.
audience. Which one is better?
Again, that's relative, and you could say that me even saying it's relative would be avoiding the question, but it's truly relative based off of the situation and what the accusation is, or if it's something goofy versus something that can be spun, because a lot of accusations might be stupid. Like,
Hmm.
for example, the steroid thing could have been spun into a way where it's comedic, or that a way that it's like he could salvage the brand somehow. But in a case like, let's say, sexual assault, or like the P Diddy thing of trafficking people, like, okay, if he was to come out and be like, "Man, I didn't do that," like, let's take Drake and the rap beef with Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
He basically was like, "Man, I'm too famous." Like,
Hmm.
he basically said, "I'm too famous to be the R. Kelly kind of thing." I
Hmm.
don't know if you've heard his song, the response to Kendrick, and he basically dug himself a grave that he's not gotten out of yet, because he said, "No, I'm too famous." And so you have to be strategic with every single, and especially this is high level. If you have
Hmm.
1 million people watching you versus 100 people, if 100 people are watching you, you can get away with this stuff and be like,
Yes.
"Okay, this is a part of, I fucked up. Let me go ahead and not do this again." And maybe you don't
Hmm.
address it, but if you have 1 million people that are holding you accountable,
Yeah, you're
you have
fucked.
to, well, you have to hire a PR team to help navigate the crisis, or just
Mm.
literally grab the bull by the horns or by the
Hmm.
nutsack and go and say, this is what happened, and sharing your side. But then people are going to be making opinions, and you might lose some people who might have respect for you. That's okay, but you have to pick and choose your battles, and pick and choose, if I respond to this is the
Hmm.
potential outcome, and it's ultimately about predicting outcomes and what would potentially happen.
Hmm. Yeah. Are you aware of the Dana White's oil me up situation?
Not particularly, no.
So he was on a live stream on Instagram, and he was talking about something, right, about upcoming shows, everything,
Mhm.
and somebody just commented, and enough talk, oil up Dana. And he just said, what the fuck's oil up, right?
Mhm.
And that particular moment grew, I think, around 2 million followers for him instantly. Like, like people just connected, right?
Yeah.
So do you think, the reason I'm asking you is, like, there are people like Gary, right? Gary Vaynerchuk, who are like, be yourself. Um, but people feel that they're imperfect and they don't want to be themselves, right? They want a polished version of themselves to be out there rather than the messy part of themselves. So do you think that showing humor, or showing, I would say, integrity or honesty, which are very core to a person's character, do you think that's beneficial, or is it like, let's try to avoid it and
Mhm.
be a bit more presentable? Because I feel like, humor is not presentable that much because it's just natural.
I think it's quintessential you show your personal side. Now, you're doing you're laughing and joking and stuff with me in a way to where I automatically like you that much more, because you're not trying to
Hmm.
come into this. But even then, there's a balance between what you're doing, Ganesh. You're not joking to where you're not taking this serious. You're
Yeah.
inserting well-timed comedic rebuttals
Hmm.
and driving the conversation forward in a way to where I know that I could joke with you. And if we were to
Hmm.
have a cup of coffee, or like sit down, like, I'd be able to have a conversation with you as a friend, versus
Yeah.
this is just somebody who's trying to put on and being like, "So what do you view about marketing? What do you view about branding? Do you
Yeah.
have your own website?" So if you think about personal brand, the left side, you have personal. This is the personality. This is what builds rapport. This is what builds trust on a deep emotional level. There are celebrities you follow, or
Hmm.
mentors you follow more than others, not because of what value they're providing to you, but based off of what you see in them that you see in yourself, where there's an aspect of their story that you like and you appreciate.
Hmm.
And then you have on the right side of personal brand, you have brand, which is what do you use to make money? What is your
Yeah.
credibility? What is your profession? What
Hmm.
is the thing that is driving you forward when it comes to your career? So you have to have this balance here. And so if you're creating content, for example, for every 2 business posts, you might
Hmm.
make one post that is personal. So you might do one about you going out to eat, or you sharing a story, or you talking about your fears, or you talk about your desires, you talk about your vision. And this is ultimately developing your skyline. I call this the skyline strategy. It's a
Hmm.
2-to-1 ratio. 2
Okay.
business posts, 1 personal.
One person.
Because there are people online that anybody can be an expert in something and talk about podcast management and how you should have a host provider and you get it distributed via RSS feed and
Yeah,
whatever
I
else.
can do that. I can
You can
fake
do
that.
that. But can somebody have the same Ganesh personality and be like,
Yes.
you might look like an idiot, but at least you'll
Mm-hmm.
be good. You know,
Yeah.
and just for example here, so the
Yeah.
personality is so important. I cannot express that enough. But there's, again, you don't want to come across as a gimmick, as somebody who's
Mm-hmm.
not serious,
Yes.
but you do need to show your personality. So you
Mm-hmm.
can be this well-crafted professional while having a little bit of like rough edges that,
Mm-hmm.
help people attach to you and,
Yeah.
want to see you win because they see the person
Mm-hmm.
outside or the person inside versus just the person wearing the suit and tie.
Got it. Um, I have, because I have a lot of marketing friends, right? And the trend that I see now is when they have a kid, right, in their home, and the first thing they do is get a domain in the name of that kid. I
Hmm.
think that's like the smartest investment that a person could do,
1000%. And
right?
what's more important than that is naming your kid something that is unique.
Oh,
So I know what I will
Elon
name my
Musk.
future children. No, well, yeah, but thinking about him naming his children, they're all unique, but not everybody has the last name Musk either, right? But
Yeah,
I already have,
the youngest has the most creative name. You cannot even spell it.
I don't even know how to, I just would refer to him as X. But even then, I think that what Elon's done is gimmick. Frankly, I
Yes.
think Elon's built his brand as that like billionaire shit poster. I
Hmm.
personally probably wouldn't do that. I think that
Yeah.
there are a lot of things that Elon could probably do better, but he's also the billionaire I'm not yet. So,
Yes.
what's worked has worked for him. But when
Hmm.
you choose the name of your kid, yeah, you need to name them. You probably don't want to name your kid after you and say, this is Ganesh Datta Jr. or this is Neil Patel. Like, you're not going to want to do that. You're setting your kid up for failure versus setting them up for success, naming them
Hmm.
something a little bit different. And I already have the names of my future children, whether that's a son or a daughter, and I could always add more to the list. But I know that I'd be able to get their domain. I know I'd be able to
Hmm.
get their social media handle. I know that they'd be
Hmm.
Googleable. I know that they'd be able to build up off of my personal brand. But I also know that I'm not going to name my son Isaac Mashman Jr. because he would always be in his father's shadow. And
Hmm.
so it's not something where it's like when you ask the question, it was almost like, this is super smart, but it's almost gimmicky. It's
Yes.
not a gimmick. It's brilliant.
Hmm. Yeah, because it's just well thought process, you know.
Hmm.
And if you can put thought into something that's natural, right? Of course, you are in the front foot, I would say, in terms of just handling that. Um, yeah, it also feels like as the time is moving forward, that people today, right, are slowly converting from people based brands, right, to a bit more natural looking brands in terms of just aesthetics and how communication is done, right? For example, if you look at Ryanair's Instagram, right, they never post any serious shit at all. Right? And they almost convert their complaints or criticisms into memes.
Yeah.
And you could argue that hurts, obviously the brand, but it seems to be working for them, at least on Instagram.
Well, there's a time to be serious and there's a time for play. And that's what businesses are beginning to realize and understand. So on April Fools, you might create a joke as a brand, but you're not going to create a joke every single week. So it's really about kind of, again, how do you crack a joke? You don't just come up with a joke like
Yes.
it's a stand up and you take 5 minutes to tell a joke to somebody in public. That's stupid. But if
Yeah.
it was at a comedy show, yeah, you would build up to it. But if you
Hmm.
were in a conversation and I'm cracking a joke,
Yeah.
it's going to be well timed based off of the situation, based off of the time. And so you have to be aware of what the timing is in order
Hmm.
for it to land, that punchline to hit.
Yeah.
And when it comes to building social media posts and building a brand, you don't need to be making it a gimmick and
Hmm.
creating jokes every day of the week. But on
Yeah.
April Fools, or maybe there's press, or like I think about Ryanair, one of the airlines out of England. They they made so many jokes last year that were all well timed based off of political situations and based off of, things like James Corden, one of the talk show hosts. And they
Mm-hmm.
were like, James Corden on his way back to something, something, something. And I remember it went viral and gained them millions and millions of views on Twitter. And so I think that businesses, especially small businesses
Mm-hmm.
who are aware and actually culturally competent would probably be the word that I would use, have a leg up on other businesses that are the traditional, like corporate,
Mm.
impersonal side of things.
Yeah. 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 Because you know, there are brands which have built their entire brand on being just funny as fuck. That's
Mhm.
just their thing, right? And then you have coffee shops which are very transparent in terms of their business, right?
Mhm.
They it's like they almost fill their taxes on Instagram. They show their incomes, their expenses, what's their margin, everything. So yeah, there is definitely two sides to the coin. What do you think about deliberate controversy, like people wantingly stating controversial things?
I'd avoid it. Typically, I'd avoid it
Mhm.
because anytime now, I'm not in the place where I was a couple years ago where I would have said that you should always avoid religion or you should always avoid politics. So I believe that there is a time and a place to mention those things.
Mhm.
If you don't need to necessarily, if you're building out your brand and let's say you're Christian or you're Hindu or you're Muslim, you're not talking about that every single day of the week unless you're trying to be a pastor or an imam or a religious figure, right? But
Mhm.
every now and again, making a post about faith and how that fits into your work or how that fits into your life might be important. That can connect people. It's done out of
Yes.
a intention of connection versus an intention of division. And
Mhm.
deliberate controversy can be really, it could backfire. And
Mhm.
again, it looks gimmick. So again, it's like you're forcing the joke versus letting the joke come out. And I'm trying to think of an example of deliberate controversy off the top of my head. I can't come up with one, but I don't think that it's a strategy that people should really implement.
Mhm.
Um, I would avoid it.
Got it. Yeah, because there are people like me who are crazy. The reason I say is, I always like to roam in the outskirts of society's limitations
Hmm.
of what's accepted and not accepted, because I feel like that's the exciting space for human to exist, right? Because everybody hates Kanye, right? Kanye West, or people love him. There is no in betweens, right?
Yeah,
And I never met a person who's like, yeah, he's okay. Everybody's like, I like him or I hate him. And
absolutely.
he said something like, if you treat if you treat your life right, being right, it's almost like a taking a test, right? You just want to be right. And life's not a test, right? Like you have to, I personally feel like you have to explore, right, the limitations almost, because right now if you look at the current situation, right, we have a president running candidate who was almost shot, right? We have a scientifically reviewed paper, right, against vaccine that was taken down. All of these are controversies that any brand or even a personality could shoot off, right? Like they could use that particular situation to
Hmm.
exponentially grow.
Yes.
um, and they definitely don't have to be on the right side of the things,
But now,
right? They
okay,
could be wrong.
leveraging a controversy or leveraging something like this can be
Hmm.
a tool, but
Yeah.
going out of your way to create one, so certain things cannot just you couldn't create and say that, oh yeah, we purposely set up a sniper on the roof to take the shot, and he was going to turn his head at this exact moment, and we're basically faking the assassination attempt.
Isaac, imagine if that was an arms manufacturer company.
Well, okay, let's go ahead and take no. Like this is actually an
No,
example.
I'm
I
I'm
believe
just
it was
saying, just imagine if a arms manufacturing company was like, that was our sniper and we are shit.
they go bankrupt. But let's again, but that if you're deliberately trying to create controversy, let's think about. I
Yeah.
believe it might be Remington. It was a gun
Hmm.
gun manufacturing company after the Sandy Hook situation in the United States about a decade ago.
Hmm.
They ended up going bankrupt as a company because of the situation, because it was a Remington gun, if I'm not mistaken, that was used during that shooting.
Hmm.
So and these are examples of situations that are outside of a brand's control. You cannot control what person purchases your product or purchases your item, or goes and acts. And this is why also hiring is important, because if you're hiring people, they're reflections of your business, they're reflections of your atmosphere, of your culture. And these are intricacies that people don't think about and take into consideration, but they're examples of you, they're reflections of you.
Yes. Yeah. I can give a leveraging example. Um, if you saw the whole clip, right? Did you notice that there was a CIA person who was struggling to put their gun inside their holster?
Yeah,
Did
and
you
she
see
got
that?
brutalized on the internet.
Right?
Like,
Now all
and
the self-defense companies are using that as a clip. They're saying, if you don't want to be this, use us,
but that's strategically done. You're building off of controversy, and you're saying, oh,
Yeah.
and these are things that takes a really witty and very aware person in order
Hmm.
to come up with,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't just be able to take that situation and be like, and force a meme. Like, it works. Like, I know Twitter, for example, whenever something goes off in the news, people on Twitter are the first to create a response that's just witty and it's funny and it's viral. And there's absolutely nothing about the assassination attempt that's funny, but the
Yeah.
outcome of how people are responding to it is
Hmm.
really interesting to watch from a human perspective. And the show's called
Hmm.
Sapient. It's like we're really seeing the darkest side of people come out in
Hmm.
this situation, and
Yeah.
how now what was culturally one way a couple years ago of like, oh, we can say whatever we want, or you shouldn't say this. Now it's like you're saying the same exact things, and you're becoming the people that you were criticizing a couple years ago. And as an American, these are things about our culture and about our current state that
Hmm.
it's almost like building a business at scale. Like, the United States is an organism, and seeing how that organism functions, every business is an organism itself. It's like, how does that
Hmm.
business function?
Yep. So I feel like, right, because I'm Indian and whatever I say amounts totally up to zero shits, right? What I observe is, right, there is no place for conversation in any typical, highlighted events in US. You cannot talk about the shootings, you cannot talk about racism, you cannot talk about slavery. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like just fucking talk. Is because if you look at South Africa, right, they went through a harder period of apartheid than US, right? um, but they talk about it, they joke about it. So
Mm-hmm.
even the upcoming generation knows what happened. They have some idea. uh, Compared to a kid in US, he or she has to learn it through textbooks. That's all, because it's not relevant in general conversations. And when they grow up to be adults, they do not know how to handle, I would say, a sensitive situation, right? Because it's almost like, now if you make fun of the shooting, right, Trump supporters say fuck you, right? And if you don't talk about the shooting enough, the other people say fuck you, like there is no place for genuine conversation of why did it happen, or
Well,
was it
I
even
believe,
necessary.
yeah, and Ganesh, I believe that there's a difference between having a reasonable conversation and offering genuine debate and genuine rhetorical conversation going back and forth, versus purposely creating controversy. And the reason why in
Hmm.
America we aren't able to have these conversations is not that we're physically incapable of doing so. It's not that
Yes.
we can. It's not that we're not smart, but
Hmm.
it's that we're emotional, and it's
Yeah,
that
and also I would say your ideology doesn't allow that in today's American ideology of tribalism, right? Where it's like,
today's, but not
yeah,
tomorrow's.
today's, yeah,
Because
who
it's a
knows about
pendulum that's
tomorrow?
swinging back, though, because now
Exactly.
you see that, oh, now you told me that we couldn't say this because this was somehow messed up, or this is politically incorrect. The jokes
Yes.
that we used to say in high school,
Yeah,
or the jokes we used to
exactly.
say in middle school, I shouldn't even be having this conversation because I'd be canceled, right? And I wasn't even the worst out of the group. So I'm thinking, and you're thinking about this, but the intention in which you're saying this is not in a way that is hateful, but there's a
Yes.
difference between a joke and purpose intent to harm.
Hmm.
That's what
Yeah.
people need to understand. And so
Yeah.
America is in this interesting period where having these conversations isn't about tribalism, but it's about we
Hmm.
are all American. Because I think about traveling across across the world, and
Hmm.
whether you're a Black American, an Indian American, a Native American, or a white American, and you go to France or you go to India or whatever, you're going to be
Hmm.
like, no, That's an American. Oh, that's
Hmm.
not. If you were to see a Black American and a white American, you're not going to say, oh, that's a Black American. That's an
Yes.
African American. You're going to say that's an American, right?
Yes.
And so all of our issues are coming off
Hmm.
of the back of we have had nothing else to bitch about. And that's
Yeah.
why in a situation that we're in something I'm personally afraid of, is the only way that I see us uniting is a war on the home front. And that's
Hmm.
not even that's based off of historical precedents to where
Yeah.
during World War II, we did not have time to argue about our little differences. It was we
Yeah.
are against a united enemy. And that's how we
Hmm.
came together. And
Yeah.
I feel like America needs to understand how we can have a conversation based off of logic and based off of reason and based off
Hmm.
of actual genuine pursuit of knowledge and clarity versus, oh, you said something and I'm emotionally offended.
Yeah.
I need an emotional support
So
animal.
I need to cancel you now.
Exactly. And that's
Right.
avoidance. That's an avoidance of problem. And that's a
Yeah.
victim culture. And I think that even when building a business and a prospect tells you no, you're not about to be like, fuck that prospect. I hate that dude. Why did he tell me no? You need to look internally and say, what about my process could have been improved?
Yeah. Or
If my
maybe he
post did
was
not
just
go
not
viral,
interested. Right. Or
yeah.
maybe he
Well,
was just not interested.
why did my post not go viral? Or why
Yeah.
did that prospect say no? And you look internally and you get
Hmm.
better from that. And
Yeah.
when it comes to our society, we've stopped looking inward and thinking, what could be different? What could be better? What could be improved?
Yeah, yeah. It almost feels like, because I'm sitting from, I would say, in a spectator stand, right, looking
Hmm.
at a game. Um, it almost feels like, right. People are like this. You can have a conversation as long as it suits, the particular situation.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's not how people talk, right? If you had five people over, talking about something, there would be one crazy piece of shit who would say the most absurd things.
Hmm.
Like, you cannot control him and say, oh, you cannot say that. You're like, fuck you, man, that's my opinion, and that's what I said, what I said, right? But the current situation, because I'm very interested in, American politics, of course, just like the rest of the world. um, right, it seems like a buffoon circus, because it's like people are talking about wrong points, right, things that
Hmm.
they should not even worry about, rather than the cause of it. Like, people were like, how the fuck did, the secret services sniper did not notice a person laying on, on the top of a building. I'm like, that's not the question you should be asking. The question you should be asking is, right, what's wrong with today's political landscape that has led to this,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, as you said, it's more of an internal question than trying to control the external parameters.
Right. Well, and you think about politics is a game of optics. It's not a game of what actually gets done. It is what is perceived as getting done.
Yep.
And business should not be a game of optics in so much as a game of execution.
Hmm.
And you think about when a politician is trying to get elected, they're getting elected off of their personal brands and what they connect. So, for example, in a large degree, when
Hmm.
Barack Obama got elected, he got elected because he was African American, the first African American president. Like, great. It wasn't even off of policies. It was off of an emotional decision based off of, something that is the lowest capability of connection. A person's
Hmm.
skin color, not off the fact he was American or any of these things. It was no, he's
Was he
African American.
American?
Okay, another time. Um,
Did
damn
you
you,
find the
Ganesh.
birth certificate?
Yeah. Well, even then,
it
this is why I
sounds
don't do
it
podcasts at 10 p.m. at night.
Yeah,
Uh,
it sounds so silly, right? Because the whole country was built on the back of foreign people.
yeah.
And now you're like, show me a birth certificate, come on, show me.
Well, it's also like you could have a religious conversation about that too. In America, it's like
Hmm.
America is the land of religious freedoms until it's not Christian,
Exactly.
and it's like no, and I view that as no. Okay, it was. I don't care if you're Muslim. I don't care if you're Christian. I don't care if you're Hindu. I don't care if you're Sikh. I don't care if you're Buddhist. Whatever it could be. It's like if you're
Yeah.
here and you're practicing good. I think it's more about a conversation of ideologies being impressed upon culture to
Hmm.
where, okay, now if you're an American, you might not want to have Islamic policies pressed upon you on a personal level to where it's like being
Yeah.
taught in schools. I can understand your argument.
Hmm.
But at the same point, you're also looking to do the same with Christian ideologies. And so,
Hmm.
but again, you cannot have this conversation typically without there being an emotional attachment here, and the emotion gets in the way of logic. But thinking about business, taking this back to marketing or what sales, 80% of sales is emotion based. So if you're selling a prospect, or you're selling them off of, this is what we can do for you on a strategic lens, and step 1, 2, 3, and 4, the guarantees, versus a, do you want to be famous? How good would
Hmm.
that feel? Right. And it's like,
Yeah.
what would sell better? And in
Hmm.
PR, there is this entire guru space of fake Forbes articles and fake press articles and fake followers and botted accounts and all this, because it was the instant gratification and the perception of things versus having a
Hmm.
genuine, strong, brand or business
Hmm.
or personal brand. And
Yeah.
these are the things that we have to set the emotions aside and look at what will actually work long term. And that's where you get policy that is effective versus policy that
Hmm.
is, in your words, like a circus, to where it's like you're
Yes.
dancing around the issue, like you're putting the bear in the middle and saying, I hope you don't bite me. And that's what
Yes.
our American politics system is today. It's a
Hmm.
game of, I hope you don't turn on me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you brought religion, right? And because you brought religion up, I think you're saying, oh no, but it's not that kind of question. Somebody asked Jordan Peterson, are you religious? And he said that's the most personal question you could ask a person. You
Mhm.
could ask a human, right? It's almost like going to somebody who is just a random person and asking what size your dick. It's so personal, right, that people will get offended. But that being said, um yeah, the whole part of religion, right, that even we look at marketing or even in politics, right, it's not religion as religion, right? It's not religion, it's just a vague feeling of religion, right? Oh, I connect with you because you're Christian. Oh, I connect with you because you're a Muslim. That's what politicians do. And the reason I brought this up is that's what most brands do, right?
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not, and this is why too. For example, during June, how many brands make it, a rainbow flag Pride Month, and then
Almost all
the
of
rest
them.
of the rest of the year, it's like, whatever. It's pandering. You're pandering
Yes.
to an audience for a specific period of time to try to gain business or try to look good,
Hmm.
versus these are our actual set beliefs that we believe in, that we stand behind. And it's, you know again, it's like, should a business put black owned business or LGBTQ business or
Hmm.
woman owned or minority owned or disabled accessible, like, should you put all of these different things? And this is a
Hmm.
conversation that I've never heard anybody really discuss at scale, because it's uncomfortable. But it's like, are you using that as a crutch to try to look good, or are you genuinely standing behind those beliefs?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say it also depends on the context of the brand, right? Like, where does the brand stem from? What are its principles?
Well, it's like the boutique coffee shop that posts their income stream. That
Yeah.
boutique store is never going to be the national franchise.
Yes.
So you think about that local coffee shop that might be LGBTQ owned and woman owned and whatever, that is local in the community. Well, cool. You have communal roots. People know you as such. They believe in what you do, or they don't believe in what you do, and they won't support you because of it. But you set yourself up. But you're not going to necessarily go and try to become that national franchise. And then
Hmm.
that's where it could look like a gimmick or look like pandering.
Yeah.
And again, that's like, these are all conscious decisions that you need to set and
Hmm.
make based off of where you're trying to go or what you're trying to build, versus
Hmm.
building your personal brand. For example, there's a hierarchy to where you could become the local hero and you're locally known in your town, your city, your township, whatever, but you
Hmm.
might not be the international icon or the national personality. And
Yeah.
so where do you want to go with this? How big
Hmm.
do you want to take it? And then you can reverse engineering the steps in order to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, because you brought a coffee shop up. Do you know that there was a socialist coffee shop in US?
That was based off of tips only, and it ended up going bankrupt or like closing down within like a month, right? If I remember the story properly. Yeah.
Exactly. They closed within like 90 days of the business because they were not profitable. They could
Well,
not even sustain it,
that's an example of the actual government structure. And like, do you really think that's going to work? Do you really think that's efficient?
Yeah.
Um, it's like somebody locally, or not locally, but somebody on Twitter that I follow just out of curiosity, because you need to get multiple perspectives. You don't want to just follow your typical beliefs, which I typically would fall underneath a lot of social conservatism or fiscal conservatism. And sometimes, a couple of years ago, I would say I'd lean a little bit more left socially, but now it's like, no, it's like how far that left has leaned is too far for me to even think I'm close. So it's like, no, like I need to be somewhere in the middle, leaning to the right. But again, he's like, we're launching the American Communist Party. And I'm like, have you learned nothing? Have you learned nothing over the past, 50 years as a student of history, thinking about, okay, the USSR wasn't great. Mao in China wasn't great. And you're thinking about these, history is a teacher that we continue to ignore.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I feel like you people went to war for that, against that, right?
Yeah. And it's fascinating to have this conversation with you as like an Indian outsider perspective, because again, it's like if you travel and go and get well versed, but most Americans, like the majority of Americans, never leave the United States. And it's like, but if you go to other places in the world and you ask them, what do you think about America? Their perception of how they view us is entirely different than how we view ourselves.
Yeah,
and it's like,
because 48% of Americans think they can fight a lion. So yeah, that makes sense.
give me some beer and some brass knuckles. Let's see what's going on. I suppose that's also what makes America great.
Yeah.
In the sense of nationalism, and the sense of pride, and the sense of, this is America has always been that superpower, basically from inception. The idea of the American Revolution and the principles of, the 13 colonies was rebellion. It was off of the backs of, you tell me to do something, we're not going to do it. And now we have entered into this age of being basically pacifists, where, oh no, it's like we can get ordered around or bossed around, and now we're getting taxed 40-50% off of every dollar we make. And it's like,
nice.
Oh, that's okay. Everything's good.
Yeah.
And it's like that meme of the dog sitting in the cafe and the cafe's burning down. It's like, this is great. It's not. And
it's
we need
not.
to, again, have these fucking conversations that can help push progress forward.
Yeah, I feel like, because I have read a little bit of history, I feel like most of Americans don't realize why America is great, right? And my perspective is, US is one of those countries where anything can work, right? Like, US is a country which made OnlyFans work. Imagine. Selling foot pics worked, and that's what America is about. You can do anything and still be successful, right? Because it allows you the space to do anything you want to.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming more of a cancel culture, where you're like, if I don't agree with you, I'll cancel you. But that extent only goes to online, right? Oh, look at that actor. He got he did not get a role because he was on the left or on the right. I'm like, okay, that's okay, but that's not what's supposed to happen. Right.
Well, cancel culture too it's not something that's new. It's something that we think is new. But I was listening to something the other day, and they mentioned how the first person who was canceled in history was Jesus Christ. He was canceled by the government and ultimately crucified. Like, it's a genuine statement here, though. But you think about it, he was canceled by the politicians and then canceled by the people, and look at what stemmed from that cancellation.
He got canceled.
He did.
Yeah. So
then think about the outcome.
Yeah, you could call it as the most brutal cancellation, right?
That right there, I mean, that could be the title of the conversation, the most brutal cancellation in history, an interview with Isaac Mashman. But it's genuine. If you think about this, the government figures and Pontius Pilate, and they were like, okay, we're going to kill you and crucify you, and we're canceling you, right?
Yeah. And he was like, but he was like, no, I got like double subscription. I am coming back.
It turned into a martyr situation, right? And isn't that the entire perception of Christianity? And the belief is there was a martyr who took that weight onto himself. Just like if Donald Trump if he was to be killed in that assassination attempt, he would have become a martyr, which would have literally led America, in my opinion, to civil war almost instantaneously.
Yes. So, Isaac, let me make you controversial. Are you comparing Donald Trump to Jesus?
Absolutely not. I'm not about to say that he's the Messiah. There are plenty of things I love and agree with him on, and plenty of things I disagree with him on. I know that
Yeah.
as a fact. I was making, it was easier to make sales. It was,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everybody had more money.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there were no wars because there weren't.
Yeah.
We weren't. There wasn't a war in Ukraine. There wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
war between Israel and Palestine. We had, yes, we had COVID, which we could have an entire debate about in of itself in the situation there. But I think about for the longest time, America has been choosing the least evil out of two evils, and it's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. Rather than a unifying vision, I feel like this is the first time in a long time where there's some degree of unification that might be happening based off of what we could build versus just simply existing or simply living.
Yeah. But I also feel like the reason Trump got elected is, I think it's one core reason. It's people could not gauge him. People could not measure him, right? Because every other candidate was a stable person, not saying random shit and tweeting out, like weirdest thing at the midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And they found this one person who ran WWE back then, right? Do you remember those days when he used to be in wrestling, right?
Mm-hmm.
you know and you could see even back then he was not a typical human being, right? Like he had something about him, and I feel like that kind of fascination is what led to somewhat of popularity in him, right? Because people could not understand him, and you couldn't predict what he was going to do next.
Well, he had a good balance of, again, personal brand of the person was fiery, unhinged, controversial,
You are
ballsy, loud.
fired. That's the
Right.
famous line.
Exactly. But then you also had the track record of business. Oh, he had bankruptcies. Well, a lot of businesses go bankrupt, a lot of, and yeah, sometimes restructuring a company through bankruptcy is the best way forward. Red Lobster in the United States, Toys R Us, Radio Shack, all these businesses have been bankrupted in order to restructure for a better way forward. And
Mhm.
it's like, you cannot base an entire, unless it's something so egregious, you cannot base an entire person's life and how they are off of one mistake or off of one thing that occurred.
Yeah, but
And
also it's not a crime to go
no,
bankrupt.
it's not a crime, but you would be able to, again, though, in communism, you find the person and you find the crime. You don't find the crime and then punish the person. It's backwards. And,
Yeah.
in business, and this is why I said you usually would like to avoid deliberate controversy versus having that well-timed joke. Because Trump was not
Yes.
purposely trying to be controversial. He was just having the well-timed jokes and being him. And that is what built him this fan base that is on fire as, almost like this religious figure, not a Jesus Christ figure, but he almost has this religious cult following.
Yeah, QAnon, right?
No.
Do you remember that?
But okay, it's all relative based off of what you view it as. It's subjectivity based on, and
Man,
it's
I'm
relative to where you're at.
I'm an Indian. Whatever the fuck you people do doesn't affect me. So
Well,
I view it as just an event and just history. That's all.
yeah. Well, okay. So it's like if we're having the conversation, and it's like Trump would be like, "What level of the caste system are you?" Like that would be something like he would create a joke, and it's not that he's trying to be ill-conceived, but he's like having a joke, and it leads in. And humor is like, again, the difference here is I'm trying to hurt you with this joke versus I'm making the joke because it's fucking funny, right? And it's like getting to that point, and even me having the willingness to make that kind of joke or create that, it's like, my intention is not to disrespect you. My intention is it's humor, right? And
yeah, man, and I feel like humor is the best way to go through a trauma. As a country, as a society, as a human also, right? Let's say your best friend gets into an accident, and once he is alive, right? That's it.
Well,
right?
And based off of your humor, Ganesh, I'm curious to know what trauma you've been through.
Oh, a lot.
Oh man. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I have Gen Z, dude. Come on. So, my previous generations fucked me with housing costs, right? My future generation is fucking me with pronouns and mental health. So, yeah, I feel
glad to know
Gen
that
Z.
also is in India too, not just here. We're united.
Oh, yeah, people are making sure here it doesn't come here. But
Hmm.
it's slowly coming. Yeah, because in India,
So where do
same-sex
you
marriage is
see
legal.
where do you see the business entrepreneur culture evolving in India? Do you see something like that taking place over
Yeah,
the next
because
decade?
we have produced 21 unicorns in the last one financial year. 21 unicorn is a very big deal for any country, right? US did around 18 or 19, I feel like. China did 24. We are at 21. So it
Now,
feels
go ahead
like,
and break that down into an American term,
so
metric
you
versus.
so unicorn is any business that achieves $1 billion valuation.
Okay, that's what I was. Okay.
So it's like US produced 19, China was like 24, and we are in right in between around 21.
Okay.
And um, startup culture is very intense in India, because SoftBank, right, the startup investors, they are heavily into Indian market, and you know now Indian capitalist society is very different, because India is a very cost conscious market.
Hmm.
Like you cannot use luxurious words and sell shit here. It doesn't work. That's why iPhone is cheaper in India, because you cannot say it's the most luxurious thing and people will buy it. No, India is a very cost driven market, cost conscious, but because we have a lot of competition, whatever you want to
Hmm.
sell, right? Because there is commies that trying to come in, right? Chinese, Russian. There are capitalists, like Western countries, and indigenous, our own, companies. So that drive is there because from 14-15, this particular government has been trying to push the ecosystem for startups, where they like will provide you subsidies, will provide you grants, relief, tax honeymoons,
Hmm.
free spaces, technology help, everything. It's for free. Just do something. And that's how we have seen so much growth, insane amount of growth.
Hmm.
Because before this we were reliant on IT, right? For example, you hired a VA and I would be your VA, right? Like that's how we earned our money, through foreign exchange. Now it's more of indigenous products being pushed.
Hmm.
For example, the NHS, right, the National Health System of UK, their whole IT is handled by one Indian company.
Hmm.
So it's like, you're able to make that link, right, where you're like, okay, we are the IT backbone of the world, and that's where we are going right now in terms of direction. Yeah, man. But I feel like any business that can survive in India can survive anywhere, because it's a very cutthroat market, right? Where it's very cost conscious, even in marketing, even digital marketing, right? It's a very cutthroat business, uh, because there are so many agencies, unbelievable amount of marketing agencies out here. So yeah, that's why I said India is a very different kind of capitalistic market, because if you try to monetize everything, it won't work,
Hmm.
right? Because I see United States capitalism and its extreme capitalism, right? Do you need my help? There is a cost, right? Like, and there are certain things that people just don't accept in India. It's like, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Well, I think our quality of life and living has been better based off of
Yes.
industrialization for a long time, and now the industrialization of India. I imagine 100 years from now, though, India will go from cost cautious to
Hmm.
consumerism,
I
and I
don't think
believe
so. I don't think
really
so.
you think that,
Yeah. Yeah,
okay,
because being cost conscious is like our DNA. It's what
okay,
Indians are for. It's what Indians are famous for. It's like Jews, money. Like it's like India and cost conscious are very. It's not because people cannot afford it, but they don't want to spend more money on it.
interesting. which is the complete opposite of America, because it's not based off of necessarily even what is the best, more so what is perceived as the best. So Apple is
Yes.
not the best iPhone or the best phone in the market for, let's say, the camera. You could look
Yeah.
and argue the fact that Samsung probably has a better camera than iPhone, but that does not matter because it's iPhone, it's the brand, it's the feeling, it's the emotion behind it, which again is a lot of what I
Yeah.
think our entire conversation tonight has been about, has been
Hmm.
the perception is more important than the actual execution. And
Yeah, but
that is,
it also like iPhone is American, right?
yeah, well, ironically, and even though it's not even produced in America, designed in San Francisco
Yeah.
and put together in India or,
China.
Vietnam or China.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
and again, it's, how many of our items in America are built in China? And you think about, I've listened to or read books in the past. For example, Andrew Carnegie's The Empire of Business, which is a compilation of his essays and letters that he wrote. And I have a copy behind me that was, I believe, a 1913 edition. But in the book, he talks about, or it could be 1931, he talks about how American products were typically cheaper. And
Hmm.
this was written 100 years ago, his essays, right? Andrew Carnegie, the great American industrialist, and about how American products were cheaper and imported products were more expensive and they were
Yeah.
perceived as better. And we
Hmm.
flipped over the past 100 years to where now imported products are cheaper and the quality is less, and
Yeah.
American products are more expensive and the
Hmm.
quality is better. And
Yes.
so it's like we flipped as a society and as a culture to where, again, it's less about cost consciousness and
Hmm.
more about how is this going to make us look, which is why you buy
Yeah.
the same iPhone year after year after year, when the one from 2, 3, 4 years ago, as long as Apple's not throttling it, is just
Hmm.
fine.
Yeah, but
It's
also it's
fantastic.
like if you look at iPhone, there has been absolutely zero revolution in iPhone in the past 6 to 8 years.
Yeah, very
But we,
little.
right, from iPhone X or 10, whatever you want to call it as, to iPhone 15, there is no difference, to be honest.
Mhm.
Right? It's the same bionic chips. It's the same speed. Yeah, it's like
Similar
very
design.
minimal. Yeah, moving forward, but people still buy it because it's one of the things is it's American and it has goodwill.
Hmm.
Right?
Now, what do you see about? Do you see this Indian hustle culture evolving too?
Indians are hustlers by by default. So it's like, yeah, because we banned TikTok in 2018. So
Okay.
so we don't have TikTok culture at least here, but we have Instagram and other you know influencer culture.
I basically am asking, am I going to see a bunch of Ganesh Dadas posing in front of rented Rolls Royces and saying that in your accent, this is how you can become a millionaire? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. People are already doing it.
Interesting.
Yeah, there is a guy called as Iman Gadvi. He's like, of course, what you just said. He's the exact definition of that.
Yeah.
He's like, I can help you become a millionaire by the age of 30. I just want to
Hmm.
talk to him and I want to say I'm 29. How do I do it in a year? just
Man,
to poke
I'm
him.
my sense of humor is like, man, if this was 50 years ago, if it was to come out and be like, this is how you can go from this level in the cast to this level in the cast. It's like, that's effectively like what it is. It's like pandering. I know that's so
Yeah.
politically incorrect, man, but
It doesn't matter because caste it doesn't exist anymore in India. So they're like, yeah, man, whatever the fuck you want to do.
but again, you think about like, again, like what Americans would view. It's
Isaac,
like,
Indians are very chill people. You could literally
yeah,
shit
well,
on their face. They would be like, yeah, man, whatever. We have taken 800 years of foreign invasion. It's okay. Seriously, that's the attitude of people. You
oh
know,
man, well, hire you for IT, but I might not hire you for HR. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Oh man, this is wonderful. It's refreshing as well to have a good banter
Mhm.
that's
Yeah, I
distant.
feel. Yeah, I feel like that's required for humans, right, to grow their, openness,
Hmm.
right? Because when a person says, "I'm open," how open are you? Are you open for communists? Are you open for, extreme liberty? How much are you open? And people
Yeah,
don't have that scale, right? Because it's not something that they can quantify.
yeah.
But I feel like when you talk to people, right, from far, far away from your home, you get to know your quantifying of your openness.
Hmm.
You're like, yeah, I'm open to communism, but just not in my country, right? I'm just giving it an example, right? Like that's how you quantify openness.
Well, it's like Americans in oil and democracy. There's oil. There has to be democracy. Let's throw the CIA in there, but it's like the fact that that's even a joking matter and something that you as an Indian know as a fact is concerning. And yeah, man.
Have you seen the Key and Pele episode where they're like,
No,
my
no.
lord, every day we are facing human right threats. He's like, United States is with you in ideology, and he's like, they're kidnapping and raping our women every day. He's like, we are with you ideologically, and then he says, and we found oil. And the American eagle sound comes in, and he's like, Operation Freedom is a go.
But again, I
Guess
suppose
what,
that's what makes this
Isaac?
great.
Guess what? I just saw the news. Guess what? Guess who is getting the contract to build Ukraine?
Who?
BlackRock and JP Morgan.
Oh, that's wonderful. Good for them. They can purchase up more independent housing over there too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they can definitely afford, to eat. Yeah.
We could talk about that for hours on end about like the limits of capitalism versus what should be controlled and what should be relegated. Or regulated.
But Isaac, do you think that American form of capitalism is extreme capitalism?
I do, and I think that capitalism is a double-edged sword. Same thing with like you could be famous and because you're famous, make more money, but you might not be able to walk into your local grocery store without being recognized. So there's a drawback to that fame, and I think that capitalism is along those same lines of, for example, a corporation can purchase independent houses and purchase, independent homes and single family homes and things of that as, things to rent out. And is that proper? Is it proper to have a large and increasing majority of housing owned by a corporation versus single families or versus independent households? I do
owned
not
by
agree
Chinese,
that that's proper.
owned by foreign nationals.
Well, exactly. But am I able to tomorrow go to India and be like, I want to purchase all this property?
Nope.
Can I purchase a piece of property next to a military base?
Yeah. No, you cannot.
Yeah, but now we can allow Chinese nationals to purchase up property next to a base here in the United
And
States.
also essentially own the whole Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's a far more serious thing because, see, I think it was in WikiLeaks where there was a document that was a study which said that Hollywood essentially the propaganda machine of capitalism, like of America, because that's how we push our ideology. Now imagine all of it is owned by Chinese.
But why does that work? It's the people that are pushing that message. And because of celebrities, again, this distance between, going back to the conversation earlier, is they are the people that we can trust. These are the voices of us because they are famous, because they are well known, because they are respected.
Yeah.
So who are the kids, the 12-year-olds, the 13-year-olds, the 11-year-olds going to look to for guidance and morals and ideologies, if not the parents and if not the nuclear family? They're going to look to these public figures. And that can be dangerous. And so again, it's like if you control the propaganda, you control everying. And this is one of the risks that, in Edward Bernay's book, the propaganda, which came out early in the 1900s, he talks about how, our society is controlled by groupthink and by, our society actively basically acts as one and is able to be influenced as such.
Yep.
And that we have puppet masters behind the scenes that are basically pulling the strings and calling the shots. And it's not that there's some cabal that's behind us, behind the United States, in so much as a collection of companies that have power and a collection of people that have power. And once you have power, you have influence.
Yeah, that's why I want to ask a Hollywood person, like, is it possible to shoot or release a movie like Interview today? You remember that movie where he goes to North Korea? Interview.
Is that the
North Korean dictator? He goes there.
Yeah. I think I remember that one briefly, or let's say Dictator, right?
Yes.
When Dictator came out, Aladdin or whatever the bullshit was, right? that right there 10 years ago came out and everybody loved it, but now
Yeah,
it's like if you release it today, it'd be like, oh my god, this is this is something that's going to cause the civilization to collapse, kind of thing. And it's
right.
crazy how much has changed in 10 years.
Yeah, but my observation is, would even Chinese allow a movie like Interview, which is based on North Korean dictator, right? Would it be even be allowed today?
Well, I don't know if I would agree that China necessarily owns Hollywood, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing as music. For example, Universal Music Group is the record label everybody knows, but they don't know that Music Group is owned in large part by a French company.
Yeah.
I believe it's called Vivendi, if I'm not mistaken. That might be the name of the company, but they own a large part of UMG. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it's like the brands that you purchase off the shelf are owned by another brand. There's a
Yes.
hierarchy to this. It's
Yeah.
like, and once you kind of take a step back and view this from a macro lens of, wow, this is how all of our society functions and works together, you realize that everything is owned by something that's owned by something that's owned by something that has another
Yeah.
person making decisions. And our entire world operates on such a small thread. And thinking about earlier this week when CrowdStrike by Microsoft went down, it's like the world went up in flames, and that's one
Yes.
company. Now
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
the infrastructure of an entire nation going down and how much would be
Mm-hmm.
affected.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. I think we are living in the most exciting part of history,
Mm,
because we're just on the cusp of destroying each other by saying just fuck you. Right, because today even I would say most around 6 to 8 countries have the capability to say fuck you and destroy the world, including India. So it's like, yeah, let's see. Let's see how
Imagine that
calm
the
could we
world goes
be.
up in flames because some Indian's like, fuck you, and presses
Fuck
the
you,
button.
that's
Like,
it. Yeah.
oh man.
Yeah, I
It's
mean.
and it's fascinating too, because now that artificial intelligence has begun to take place, we try to
Hmm.
predict what artificial intelligence will make our society look like, and what it will be
Yeah.
like in 100 years. And it's impossible to think about.
Yeah.
It's we have these ideas based off of science fiction like the Terminator or the Matrix, when artificial
Hmm.
intelligence could be something entirely different because it's on another layer of being. It's almost a spiritual being in the sense of there's no comprehension. It's like
Hmm.
you try to comprehend God. What is God? Well, he's not some floating guy with a beard and a robe on a cloud. That is not
Hmm.
God.
Are you
And it's like,
describing me?
well, yeah, right. God's Indian. Imagine. Uh,
Isaac, I have an opinion about AI, right? I feel like it's like, do you remember the .com bubble we had in the early 2000s? I feel like
yeah,
that's what AI is. It's just a bubble. It's not as exaggerated as people think it is, because no AI company is making money right now, and they're spending crazy amount of money. It's not sustainable, right? Because GPT acquired customers at the rate of 680 times faster than Google,
mm,
right? Google took 12 years to build the same amount of followers or users as GPT did in 18 months.
that
18
is
years.
true.
So it's like, it doesn't make sense anymore, right? People are just using it for left and right. Now if you look at WhatsApp, there is AI to respond to people. And I feel like it's like this, right? Back then, you remember, for everything you had a website, like that's the .com bubble. And now that's what is happening with AI, right? Do you
Well,
want
and
a
artificial
girlfriend?
intelligence,
You have
in
an
my
AI.
opinion, I believe that AI is meant to do. It's meant to be integrated, but not meant to be the thing that's doing the heavy lifting. So thinking about like lifting weights, right? Let's say you're bench pressing.
I
You
don't think so, Isaac. I don't think so.
really, I
Yeah,
believe that's
because
meant to be
OpenAI,
integrated, but not
the
to
s-
be a replacement in so
the
much.
C, the CTO of OpenAI just said that, um, humans should do all the basic work and creativity should be up to AIs.
Hmm.
Because she said, if you can draw and if I cannot draw, and she used a word that it irritated me. She said, artists gatekeep skills. Could you imagine saying that out of your mouth?
Hmm.
Saying artists are gatekeeping skills. Like, she just went on like 10 minutes rant where she said, I cannot draw, but an artist can draw, but I need to
But
draw, so I will use AI.
artificial
So it's better for us to leave all the creative work to AI and just do basic things for humans.
But what was the foundation of that language model and of that artificial intelligence? It was the
Creative input
foundation.
of humans.
Exactly. So we're still the foundational piece, but I view artificial intelligence as when you're lifting a weight and bench pressing or squatting a new personal record, you have a spotter there to make sure that they can help you up if you fall down, or they're there to say go go go, motivate
Mhm.
you to maybe lift up some of the weight and make it to where it's more efficient. I view artificial intelligence as the spotter for mankind, to where we're still the backbone, but artificial intelligence is the thing that's pushing us forward at a rate that we couldn't have reached alone. Now, could you be, and Brian Johnson from Blueprint, he's somebody who I've been following religiously over the past several months and
Mhm.
listened to many of his interviews about, not even biohacking is not what he likes to refer to it as, but if you cannot make the proper decision
Mhm.
yourself on what you should eat, when you should go to bed, all of these things, imagine
Mhm.
if an algorithm says you need to wake up at this time, you need to eat this, you need to avoid that, and you
Mhm.
follow that algorithm and you follow that AI strictly in order to get the best outcome for yourself. You're
Yes, but
still the person
also,
who has to implement it.
yeah, but also that artificial intelligence doesn't work on natural instincts, right?
It works off of logic and not emotion, and
No,
it,
I'm
it
talking about
eliminates that.
natural instincts. Maybe your forefathers were night hunters, so you do not fall asleep in the night. But the algorithm says go to sleep at night. It doesn't work for your body. It is probably injurious. So
But wouldn't you be able to
are
say
you
that
are you
artificial?
gauging what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say is
I do.
right.
But if you were to tell the AI and based off of a DNA data set, and it looks off of the historical precedents of where you're located and factors such as climate and skin color and how it's
Hmm.
affected X, Y, and Z, and then it takes into account the historical wars and religion and all of these things
Yeah.
that we cannot compute into a single algorithm ourselves.
Hmm.
Imagine if an artificial intelligence says all of these things and is able to say, all right, based off of this entire data set, this is the best way forward for you in this particular moment,
But
based off of
still,
this time of the year and
yeah.
your body mass and everything. It's
Hmm.
incomprehensible compared to let me go to bed because I'm tired.
Yeah, but if you look at it, right, the dot com, the early internet era, was more democratized. Anybody could do it.
Mhm.
But AI is more corporation controlled.
This is true. As it stands right now, it is, or
No,
it's
I
formed to
think
at
it will be
least be
forever because companies have
well.
realized the power behind AI. So they're like, you know what? We will have it for ourselves. They pretend to be open source, but they're not.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you think about the amount of energy and power and land that is going to be required in order for all of this stuff to function.
Yes.
And just like in the Matrix, you have to have a power source, right? It's like,
Hmm.
again, it's like how many
No,
hundreds of thousands of acres
I
of
think,
land will.
yeah, I think the problem with AI is not the power it requires, but rather the cooling, uh, you know, part of it, where you need a lot of fresh water. And once it cools out the servers, the water is contaminated, right, with radiation. You cannot use it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think
But
we are
I
fucked up. Yeah,
suppose, couldn't you use artificial intelligence to provide the solution to that problem, though?
I
Imagine you
don't
have
think
all this
so.
information and you're
Yeah,
saying AI.
that's what the alt whatever his name is. He said, right, the founder of GPT. He said, I don't know how I'll earn money from this AI. I'll build this AI and then I'll ask the AI to find me ways to be profitable.
Isn't that so wild to even think that in our lifetime, and then 50 years from now, there's a show on Amazon called Upload. And I've only watched the first two seasons, but the concept of Upload is you have the real world and you have this digital world where you can get uploaded into this basically digital space, and your consciousness is uploaded into a computer. And people in the real world are able to interact with you just like Sims. And you're getting into the realm of simulation theory, right? To where it's like, are we living in a simulation, and how many layers of the simulation are we in? But the show Upload is fascinating because the only way I believe that anything such as that would be possible would be having to use artificial intelligence to compute problems that would take us trillions of years to be able to solve.
But I also feel like, Isaac, is any technology, right, when it comes into existence, right, the first few decades are when it grows the most. And if you look at it as a graph, and then
Mhm.
it gets pretty flat. For example, space technology, right? Space technology grew between 60 to 90s. right? 60s to 90s. And
Mhm.
then it became pretty flat, right? We came up with reusable rockets in 2014, right? And we are still working on that craft to be reusable. I feel like AI is, I think it's a similar, it will have a very quick growth of certain decade,
Mhm.
like probably 20-30 years, and then it will just go flat. Then it will be harder to come up with innovations, to keep it more efficient or just be
See,
more
I disagree
sustainable.
though.
Yeah.
And I believe that we can almost, even having this conversation and debating it almost makes us look ignorant, because there's no way that we're able to predict what our world will look like. And I do believe though, and I would fall underneath the schism of people that believe that AI is a net positive. I believe that again, and that's one of the things that people are starting to talk about of, the next 50 years, there's going to be these pro technology versus anti technology groups that start to develop, of like, oh, we're 100% off of Instagram, 100% off of social media, 100% off the internet, versus the we're pro internet, we're pro tech, we're pro all this stuff. I think that there will be a growing schism there, but the idea of AI will just continue to exponentially grow, and I don't think
Yeah, but
that.
the concept or the whole angle of AI is not democratic. It's more of an authoritarian thing. It's like
Yes,
are you aware of this? Chinese, okay, Chinese cafeterias where you had to smile to enter. You had to be happy.
I've seen something like that, or let's say an AI program through a security camera
Yes,
monitoring productive work. And yeah, there are absolutely negative use cases, or cases that would be more
Isaac.
authoritative.
Governments are known to make the best of negative impacts of a technology.
I
Right,
think any
you look
idea
at
that a
you
government is,
you
is
look
going to be
at
able to be.
MK16 Ultra, right? The
Yeah,
testings that they did, or the gases that they produced, or the digital tapping that they have done of
yeah.
each and every individual. you know it's like the government tends to use absolute negative of things because they like control.
Which I suppose artificial intelligence will need regulation, and this would be going against a 100% pro-capitalist approach, to where maybe artificial intelligence is separated and owned by the people versus the two or three corporations that exist.
Yes, then
But
you're
how do
looking
we even
at,
approach that problem?
I think it's very simple. You just decentralize AI.
Hmm.
Yeah, you say, nobody can, have copyrights, trademarks, or trade secrets of AI. It has to be open or you don't do it.
Well, there is an entire conversation about cryptocurrency and the regulation thereof, and I feel like that has progressed nowhere. Where it's like we were talking about regulation for crypto, and it's like,
Hmm.
what has really come of that? Not much, aside from, okay, Ethereum's is a legitimate currency that can be traded, versus there hasn't really been any agreement on.
I think, Isaac, that particular conversation is only in United States.
Hmm,
For
interesting.
example, if you go to Bolivia, their currency is so dynamic that they use dollars. Imagine a foreign country using a foreign currency as the standard,
Right.
right? If you go to Kenya, right, they do not use, their own currency. They use rand, which is like South African currency. So I think this conversation of regulating or is crypto really needed is only in United States, because most of the countries which US has invaded, or whatever, right, know the value of crypto, or foreign fiat currencies, because they do understand they are not stable enough, right, either to produce currency or to regulate currency of their own.
Of course, yeah. Which is a use case for cryptocurrency being brought in, to
Which
where
is definitely
yeah,
because right now in Argentina, I think 60% of their gray economy is dependent on crypto. Gray is,
yeah,
like,
Bitcoin specifically, if I'm not mistaken, or like El Salvador has committed to purchasing like
yeah,
a Bitcoin or something every month or something like that. Um,
exactly. So it's like,
yeah,
they understand the value of crypto because they are so destabilized. And
yeah.
if the war in American frontier was to happen, I think people would really quickly realize the value of crypto or anything that's other than money.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting, and I'm curious to see how not only the next 50 years, when I'm an old
Hmm.
man, or maybe we're
Yeah.
uploaded into some
Mhm.
AI program. I don't know, whatever the next 50 years look like, versus even the next 5 years or the next 12 months. Is
Mhm.
we're entering into this unprecedented time. It's the equivalent of, Galileo looking and seeing the stars and being called some evil witch, or because a woman discovered, a certain medicine, all of a sudden she's burned at the stake. Like, we're literally peasants in this current stage of evolution and, adaptation and what we're creating. And I hope that, and this is kind of like my Elon Musk take, it's like, I hope that we do what is best,
Mhm.
but I don't know if
But
it
best
is in
for
our
who?
nature to
That's the
do that. Well,
question.
yeah, and that's relative, because what could be
Yeah.
best for us might not be the best for you.
Oil.
Or exactly. Well, no, I mean, I think about that too, and it's like we wonder why there are radical groups, and it's like if we haven't invaded countries for the past 50
Yeah.
years, there wouldn't be so much radicalization. But again,
Yeah.
these situations create radical outcomes because we are not seeing it from. Imagine, we're not the ones being invaded. Nobody steps foot
Exactly.
on American soil and invades us,
Yeah.
like in the traditional sense of, let's say, going to Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria.
Uh-huh.
It's like it's incomparable.
Hmm.
And again, people here in the States have this degree of comfort because we're separated by the massive amounts of water in the oceans.
Yeah, but also it's like, right, Americans are cocky because they're isolated, they know that. And
Yes.
and I see Americans always talk about Russia. They're like, fuck you, Russia. And I'm like, imagine if Russians did that, right? Because I think people have very short memory where they forgot like the Cuban missile
Hmm.
thing. They just don't
Well,
remember it
and
anymore.
Russia sent a nuclear submarine
Yeah,
66 miles off the coast of Florida, right off of Cuba. And it's
yeah.
like
In
that.
1973, US wanted to blow up India. Do you know that? Like they dispatched 85% of their navy to India.
Hmm,
And
you
that's
fucked up
when,
their curry, man.
yeah, that's why. Yeah, because we want to develop our own nuclear. So they were like, we
Yeah.
will destroy you. And that's when Russia stepped up for India. And that's why if you look at Indian culture and history, Russia is
Hmm.
very close to us because we have traded with them for 8,000 years.
Yeah.
So
When America's only been around for,
America
not
is a,
even a
yeah,
quarter of that,
new land.
300 years, and it's
So
not
that
even 300.
the reason I brought that up is, you know, uh, Americans are not threatened by anybody. It's
Hmm.
not because they cannot be threatened. It's just people don't really care about it because American society itself is, you know, exploding on its own, or
Well,
so
no,
to speak,
a
right?
lack
Because
of an external enemy.
you folks have to make motivational advertisements for people to fight for your country.
Yeah. Well, no, and a lack of external enemies and external, competition creates
Threat. Yeah.
internal threats. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. And I'm again, it's like I view that we will either enter into the best era
Hmm.
of the United States
I
ever,
don't think so,
or
Isaac,
the
because
worst.
you got people questioning your sexuality.
Well, that's the thing. Is that going to be the case 50 years from now or 10 years
Yes,
from now, to where
definitely.
we might
Not even
look
10
back on this?
years. Give me 5 years.
Well, okay, but then even something like that, you
Isaac,
would by
if I
making
was
that
the devil,
statement.
right? If I was the devil, I'd be like, give me 5 years, I will show you. Because
But
one thing is
you
apparent,
as
right? One thing is
yeah,
apparent. You cannot have Bible study in schools, but you can have drag queens stripping in schools. You see where it's leading
fascinating to
to,
see the
right?
Indian perspective here, and as how conservative you sound.
Yeah, fuck that, man. Come on. You're like,
Hmm.
don't talk about religion, but you can talk about sexuality, which is the most primal thing a human is born with.
Hmm.
And you challenge that. And you're like, it's okay to challenge the most natural instincts, but you cannot challenge something that's man made.
Well,
Imagine,
you could
imagine
argue
that.
that even religion is primal as well, because it
Yes,
is
that's what
innate
I'm
in
saying.
us.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But one could argue that sexuality is more primal than religion, right? Because religion is taught, and you know, sexual, I would
Is not
say,
taught in the same degree as religion is taught,
yeah,
and I do
because
see that.
you know who you are,
Right.
and you
Right.
know, okay, what, I don't want to go into details, but you're aware of the natural instincts, right? So American schooling system is, let's question that. Okay, let's put you up on puberty blockers, right? Let's snip snap you at the age of freaking 3 months old. And yeah, let's not talk about religion. Yeah, because it's too extreme.
Again, emotion versus logic, and emotional decisions versus let's actually
Yeah,
look at
man.
things.
What I'm trying to say is, I feel like there should be a rule in constitution like don't mess with others' children.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like Joe Biden and certain people have said like our children, and it's like no, it's not your
No.
children. It is
Yeah.
the individual who has the child.
Mm-hmm.
That is their child, and if they go
Yeah.
and expand that right to their family or expand that right to the community to around
Mm-hmm.
them that is building and raising the child, because
Yeah.
again, humans were typically raised in tribes. They were raised by the grandmothers, the aunts, the friends, everybody. There was a tribe in order to raise the child, and that was
Mm-hmm.
typical. And now we are so secularized in America, particularly where there is no sense of community. We have
Yeah.
these screens around us, which are
Isaac,
great, but
it's known as invasion of privacy, right? I think that's a term that doesn't exist anymore in conversations. There, it used to be a
yeah,
big deal, right? Invasion of privacy. But once people found out CIA is tapping everything, they're like, "Yeah, man, I'm okay with no privacy."
yeah. Well, it's again, and I do believe though I have a degree of optimism that is consistently
Yeah, man,
being
I'm
tugged.
pessimistic though.
Well, and well, that's your right and your prerogative to be.
Yeah,
And
I think
I
I
have
think
this
I think we
constant war
both are.
between both
Yeah, I
both
think
of them.
we both are balancing right on the optimistic and pessimistic. Let's see what happens.
I would argue and say that where I'm at right now, Ganesh, is I am
Yeah.
more optimistic for India's future than I am optimistic for America's. I am being, and I almost don't even want to even smile or laugh about that, but I say that wholeheartedly because we have to change a lot of the
Hmm.
things at our
Yeah.
core in order to
Hmm.
get back to that era to where I do believe that it is possible for us to enter into America's golden age that we have not hit it yet.
Yeah.
But we will either enter into the golden age or
Hmm.
we will enter into the dark ages.
Yeah.
And I hope and pray that that is not the case. And I think that these
Yeah, man.
conversations though will
I,
be
I
be
also
the
feel
reason.
like I also feel like if once a human being realizes how minute he is in terms of the timeline of the earth, people would not be shitty as they are, I feel like.
Yeah, well,
Right?
yeah,
Because
I would have to
every
agree.
civilization has taught that we are here forever. And one small planet starts to piss off some stones and we're done. Right?
Well,
That's how simple we are, you know. And people think, we are here to stay, like we will be here forever. That might be the case, but that doesn't make you humble, right?
well, and it's like I don't believe that there's this idea, and then I'm going to have to wrap it up. It's already almost
Hmm.
midnight where I'm at. It's been
Yeah.
an amazing conversation. I really have enjoyed this. This is something I want people who follow me to watch. But um, man, I'm just thinking through. We have this sense of importance, and like energy, like matter, it cannot be created or destroyed. Right, the primary laws. Right. I believe that a personal brand is kind of the same way. I believe that a personal brand can be created but cannot be destroyed. But the closest way it can be destroyed is if the person is forgotten. If the
Hmm.
person is forgotten, they essentially just disappear. But
Yeah.
we think about the historical figures from Gandhi to Martin Luther King to Martin Luther to Jesus Christ to Adam to Eve to Genghis Khan to any person throughout history, historical figures. They're remembered and have this sense of importance given to them based off of who they were and what they accomplished.
Hmm.
And a person can have a sense of entitlement if their results match it. And
Yes.
it's not about just blanket narcissism. And
Hmm.
right now we have a lot of narcissism with nothing to show for it. And that
Yes.
is dangerous, right? You as well. So, man, it's been a
Yeah.
pleasure. It's been an awesome
Thank you so
conversation.
much, Isaac, for being here. Of course, it's midnight for you. Yeah, but thank you for being here. Taking your time, and I feel like we have given some value to our
I feel
audience too, right?
education, entertainment, a little bit of
Yeah.
everything. It's been good. It's been good.
Yes.
Seriously.
And to my audience, guys, this is the end of the episode. And if you have survived this long without being offended, congratulations, you're just a normal human. And until next episode, thank you and take care.